to another episode of the Higher Level Podcast. So tonight, no guests, no nothing. It's just me and James on to talk some fights. Obviously, talk some regional fights this past weekend, and obviously the upcoming UFC Fight Night card, headlined by Derek Brunson and Darren. Obviously, a lot of UK interest on there. So yeah, lots to talk about, lots to cover. But I think we'll kick it off with Chris Bugbar's promotion at Holytown Havoc. That took place on Saturday. Unfortunately, I had a ticket but couldn't go, which was a fucking pain in the arse. I was looking forward to it, and COVID struck and took me out. So I missed it, and asked a couple of friends if they could record some fights for me, but of course they get pissed off and didn't do it. So kind of what I expected. So obviously, James, you were there. You had Mark Ewan fighting against Michael Blair. Probably one of the fights, especially MD involved in MMA and MD looking out. That would have been a fight that stood out from obviously two extremely promising amateurs, two guys that look like they've got very promising futures meeting in their professional debuts. So we'll come to that fight and others. But overall, how was the show? I know people were saying it was extremely warm. How were you dealing with the heat?
It was pretty warm in there, man, to be honest. It's just one of those it's not got a high roof. It's one of the wee venues and it's packed. It was warm outside as well, to be honest, but I enjoyed it, man. It was like a throwback to the shows we used to go to about 10 years ago, Keith Minor's Club and stuff like that. It was a good atmosphere. I don't know how many people was in there. I think there was less than 200 in there, but it was absolutely rammed. The crowd were excellent. There was no trouble. The fights were good as well, which probably made the night decent for everyone. But it was just a good atmosphere. There's something about those wee shows. There's no they're obviously not as professional as the bigger shows with what's going on and stuff like that. But there's something about them where fighters have to experience it. I think at some points it's good for kind of character building. And it was good, man. It was like I've been in 100 shows like that before in community centres and welfare halls and whatever else, and there's a place for them. Do you know what I mean? And that was a decent one. It's the first one I've been here like that in a long time.
It looked, I mean, don't get me wrong now, you know as well, especially with Bungie, with Chris, he's got a good fan base anyway. He's got a lot of guys that always travel to watch him fighting it. So I kind of felt like it was going to be a great atmosphere in there. And I was kind of thinking for him as well. Obviously, he was headlining the card, but obviously then promoting and pushing his first show as well. I can imagine the stress levels for him must have been pretty high leading up to it, with all the additional things, as well as training yourself and preparing yourself to perform in front of a lot of his friends and family and fans.
It's a lot to take on board, that, to be honest, man. Promoting in itself is quite a stressful thing. Especially just coming out of COVID and stuff. But promotion wise, it turned out good. It was a good show.
Excellent. And obviously you were there. You had Mark fighting in the show. When was Mark's fight announced? It wasn't like how many weeks out was it where Mark you knew Mark was going to be fighting?
Well, it was matched for Almighty at the end of September 1st, and then it was, I think they've had full camp. Both guys had the 6 or 7 weeks. I think it wasn't like a short notice thing. It's been booked for a wee while. I'm not sure exactly, but it's definitely been about 7 weeks, maybe longer. So they've had plenty of time to prepare for each other.
I don't know why. I don't know if it's maybe, it's like, I think you lose track of weeks and time and all that, and I think that's maybe what it is. I've probably just missing a few weeks somewhere. And in terms of that fight itself, obviously, I'll get you to tell me a bit about some other fights, because I, again, obviously wasn't there. How did the fight go over? What were you expecting the fight to be like, and did it sort of play out how you imagined it would?
It'll come across as cliche here, but it pretty much went the way I knew it would. We knew Michael was a good fighter. I think he had his last amateur fight on the same show that Mark fought Teddy Stringer, and we weren't allowed to be cage side for it because of the COVID stuff, but they had a TV in the changing area, so we've seen it. and it was the first time I'd actually seen him fight. I never knew he was 6-0 and stuff, but it was impressive that night. He beat a 4-4 or 4-1 guy who was a short, stocky guy who was trying to take him down. He was good sized, lightweight Michael, good forward pressure and striking. So our game plan wise, our first thing was to take that away from him, which Mark did. He came out and he started in southpaw just to make it a wee bit awkward, and he started low line side kicking Michael's knee, so he couldn't get that forward pressure established straight away. I had a feeling once Mark started kind of catching him on the feet, he would try and wrestle, which he did, which again is kind of natural pathway there, and Mark shut that down pretty well. The cage, one thing that I should mention, the cage at the show was small. I don't know if it was 18 feet or 16 feet, but it was much smaller than we've got, like a 20-foot cage in the gym, obviously. But I think when you'll be hearing back from different people at the standard that some of the fights was very good, but I think the smaller cages obviously played a factor in that. There's been a lot of action, so that meant that it made it a wee bit easier for Michael to get shot off and stuff. But Mark, he was nowhere near taking Mark down once. Mark's takedown defence is fairly good. He's countered that and he's punished him for trying to take him down. Mark actually took Michael down a couple of times and he got straight back up both times, which is what a professional MMA fighter should be doing. The second round, Mark cut him sister about 2 minutes in. It was quite apparent what Michael was trying to do and stuff. And you could see him not starting to doubt, but you could see like the kind of writing was on the wall about a round and a half in. But at the same time, the kid's still dangerous enough that if you sleep on him, he's going to get some. But Mark just took over in the second round. I don't think he missed in the second round. He faked. He's all the reads and his timing and stuff was all established for round one. He hurt Michael a couple of times. His face was quite marked up. I think he cut him. And then he's caught him as he's backed him up, and as Michael's been circling to his left along the cage, he's threw up like a nice fast high kick just to shepherd Michael in to his left, and Mark's followed that up with a right hand which dropped him. He was hurt quite bad on the shot, like he sat down against the fence, and Mark's got a couple more shots in, and John Jameson stopped it. So it was pretty much how there was elements of all of Mark's amateur fights in that pro performance. The stuff we'd kind of planned for just kind of came out. Even stuff we've been working on in the gym with Mark about cage control and penning guys in and using lateral techniques to funnel guys into certain positions where you can push for finishes, and all that kind of played off. But I was impressed with Michael Blairman right for the start taking the fight. Again, the two of them are the best two amateurs at their weight in the country. They could have easily avoided each other. Mark is a guy who we want hard fights for him straight out the gate. He's got another hard fight the 28th against Tom Mullen. You could see he's run amateur. There was no easy fights at amateur for him. But I was impressed first of all with Michael taking the fight. It shows the type of fighter that the kid is. We've got guys in the gym that know him personally. I think some of the boys went to school with him and stuff like that, and they were all like, he's a very nice kid, he's a good guy, and he turned up to fight, and I think he'll learn for that. He'll have the weight off his back, that undefeated record that sometimes can go with being a pro, and I think he'll bounce back for that, and he should go into big things, I think, that kid.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we'll see Michael back in there. Like I say, he's a very promising fighter. Fighting Mark and the two of them fighting each other off their first pro fights just shows both guys were looking for difficult fights. And we'll come to Mark's next fight in a wee bit on Almighty, which is a quick turnaround, but obviously you knew that was going to be the case. In terms of the show, with me, I've not seen any fights. I've seen results and stuff like that. But for you, what fights did you manage to catch? What stood out for you in the show? What fights were?
There wasn't. See, to be honest, I never seen all of them. But the ones I did see, I never seen a bad fight. The only the ones that I can remember that stood out, it was the Gary McMillan, Damon Donald one. So I know Damon quite well. He's fought a bunch of your guys. I think he took the fight on 2 days' notice. Damon. If you know him, he's probably one of the most exciting fighters in Scotland. He's absolutely mental. There's like some kind of structure to chaos when he fights. He's just a tough kid, and he's really exciting to watch. I think Gary maybe took the first round in that, and then Damon started taking over it. A big round 3. I think it was a split decision, but I think it was a clear win for Damon Donald. The last round was a 10-8. So I seen that, but again, very good match fight, decent. I seen Lorenzo Parenti. Is it Ryan Campbell? I think it was. Yeah. Again, while it was on, it was good. Campbell's dropped Lorenzo with a head kick right at the gate. Again, it looked like that small cage has been a factor with just how quick these guys were getting to it. I think he's came down into his guard, and Lorenzo's actually ended up on his back. The kids' jiu-jitsu looked pretty slick. Lorenzo probably won round 2. Round 1 was a hard one because he got dropped, but he still done really well in the round. And then he couldn't make it out for round 3. I don't know if it was a delayed reaction for the head kick or something, but he was compromised and couldn't get out for round 3. But again, well matched fight. Both guys done really well. Who else did I see? The kid from Hardwick's gym. He fought a kid for Aberdeen. Maybe the first fight, the Fraser, I think it was, for Aberdeen. Right. Paul McBain was telling me this kid's like 16 years old. He was a boy, and he was fighting. It was legit man he was fighting, and I think the two of them beat the shit out of each other. The kid for Aberdeen lost, but he probably shouldn't have been in that welfare club because he's 16 years old. You know what I mean? But, tough kid, and again he'll come away for that. But those were kind of the fights that stood out for us. I think I never seen Jordan Strong because I was backstage, and I actually left before the main event. I knew I seen the guy Chris was fighting warming up, and it looked like it was going to be a quick night for him. So we just shot off, man. By that time, I think I'd been in there for 5:30, and the heat was fucking getting to us. And we were back in the gym the next morning at 9 o'clock. So I was home for 11:30, walk the dogs.
Brilliant. So overall, sounds like a really good night, good fights, good showing. I think Chris has said he's going to be putting on one a year, so we look forward to seeing the next Holytown Havoc. Hopefully that level of matchmaking stays consistent, man, because it was very good. Some of the shows I've been to during the COVID stuff, the fights have been absolute dog shit. With the kind of QFC guys turning up for £100 and a doing left, right, and centre, and you see all these cards with these first round finishes. There's a couple cards even last month where it was first round finish after first round finish all the way through. But if you look at the results on paper for that card, that some of the matchmaking was really good. I don't even think the matchmaking was like that 6 weeks out. I think the initial cards weren't as strong as it turned out, but it turned out a really good, strong card, like domestic level, kind of Scottish level. There was some very good fights there, man. Brilliant, and kind of leads us into, so obviously we're speaking about Mark there, so Mark again is got Almighty coming up now. You said like Almighty was already booked before he was booked to fight Michael. So just was the plan always just that as long as Mark came through this fight unscathed, that he would be right in Almighty to get his second pro fight? Yeah, so he was back in the gym. He came in Sunday actually because we had a kid up for England, Chris Morris, was up training with us for 5 weeks. So Mark came in on Sunday just to catch Chris before he left, and then he was back training Monday. So there's some good stuff with the fight where Tom Mullen's in some ways quite similar to Michael Blair. He's a little bit taller. He's more of a submission threat, I think, but it's similar to him. So
we're just straight back to work pretty much. I think Mark is definitely just want to make up for lost time with the COVID thing. I mean, we were going to turn him pro before lockdown. We took the Teddy Stringer fight. He was already ranked number 1 in the UK at the time at lightweight amateur. We took the Teddy Stringer fight just to get him a fight during lockdown, and because Carol Prince put it on for us, and it was like, as soon as we can get a chance here, like he's still verbally got that agreement with EFC in Africa, but they're not bringing anybody in, so we're like, we can't be waiting on people anymore. Do you know what I mean? We're just going to get them out and get them to work.
And you've got to think as well, obviously, everything going to plan with Mark, if he can get 2, 3, 4 fights here under his belt and everything goes the way you want it to go, you've got to be looking at the likes of Cage Warriors and stuff like that. Obviously, Mark being an exciting fighter, he's certainly somebody that promotions like that would look out for, and with him expanding across to the States and stuff like that as well. There's plenty of opportunities going forward.
Yeah, there is. And most of these promotions are aware of him anyway, because they keep an eye on the better amateurs. And obviously, he's coming for a long line lightweights at our gym now, through Turner and Delaney and Stevie and Stevie Mop and stuff like that. Yep. So he, I try not to talk too much about him because I don't want to put pressure on him, and I don't want to put people off fighting him. But he has the potential to go further than any of the guys we've had so far. He's probably the best athlete I've seen in the gym, to the extent he's got a special mindset, that kid. Yeah. And he's in a position where he's got the knowledge and the experience of the guys I just mentioned to learn from that they never had. So it'll be interesting to see where he goes. But we've had just about every other pro featherweight and lightweight in the country in our gym at some point to spar, and none of them have got what he's got, if you know what I mean. Like, putting it too much detail, and the kid's young as well. So we'll see what happens.
I think the thing with Mark as well is, obviously I've done interviews and stuff like that, where you can, a certain thing when you're interviewing some people, you speak about that mindset, you can see that in a guy, and it's visible to see in Mark just when you speak to him, or so I know what you mean with that. You can definitely see he's got that mindset there, as well as the athletic ability, and it's just about putting everything together. And then
he's a worker as well, that kid. And the good thing there with that fight at the weekend is it was a fairly hostile environment for him. I mean, we get booed during his whole ring walk and stuff like that, and we get called names and stuff like that. But at the end of it, they were applauding him, and you know, they were respecting him just because he what he'd done, and he never made a big song and dance about it. He never fucking jumped up in the cage and stuff like that. He just done his job. And when you see the video, you'll see him like he's not celebrating massively. He's just done what he knew he was going to do, or what he prepared to do. Like, it's just in his job pretty much. It's not like if you're a bus driver, you don't fucking celebrate driving the bus. Do you know what I mean? You just drive the bus and then go home, and he's got that kind of attitude to fighting. So we'll see what happens to him. But the next fight's a good one for him again. It's a guy with a ton of amateur experience turning pro for a very good team. So it's just going to be another kind of step up for him.
Brilliant. And obviously then we've got the UFC this weekend. I need to check the running times for it, but it might actually be, being down south, it should be on at pretty decent times for us, right? I think
it's early, man. It's early.
And I mean, it's a good card, man. There's if you're UK based anyway, but I mean, a lot of the guys are well known. Obviously, we've got Darren Till headlining the card. We'll come to that fight, but I kind of want to come to Paddy Pimblett first. The reason being is, well, first of all, his personality, he's captivating. He's got a massive fan base, but also I think Paddy's got the potential to surpass the likes of Darren Till and stuff like that. And I don't know if that's going to be the case in terms of how he performs in fights in the UFC, but I mean in terms of popularity and marketability and stuff like that. And When's the last time you can remember a UK fighter causing this much buzz for his debut?
There's not been for a while. Certainly not at the UFC. I think the guys in the know were excited about Jack Shore going to the UFC. I think, and it's proved to kind of be rightly so because he's been doing so well and stuff. But Pimblett a different proposition.
Yeah.
For any other UK fans, just because of the following that the kids got. I mean, there was an interview last week saying he was making more of Cage Warriors than he's making with this UFC contract, and I think in part that was due to the tickets he was selling in Liverpool. We're obviously Justin for our gym's quite tight with Paddy. He's been out with him before, he's trained with him and stuff like that. And he says when you just cut about Liverpool with him, it's like being with a football player. It's like everybody knows him. People stop and getting pictures took with him, and it takes time for everybody. So there's not been a UK guy like that. There is some resemblance to when Connor was coming up out of the Holy Island and Dublin was behind him. But Paddy's a wee bit different, man. He's like cheeky, kind of scally. I think he actually turned the UFC down before, but I'm excited to see him finally get there now and see how it plays out with him there.
Yeah, I believe he's turned the UFC down not once but twice.
Which shows a level of maturity that a lot of fighters don't have. But some guys will want to get there too quick. But it shows that he's aware of his actual skill level and stuff like that. So he obviously feels like he's ready for it now. He's had some big performances at Cage Warriors and stuff. He's beat some UFC guys. So we'll find it on Saturday. But it's exciting to see another British fighter there, and especially one that you always knew was going to end up there, just because of the fights, Cage Warriors champion, and just the fan base that he's got. So it's exciting to see it kind of happen there.
And obviously Paddy's getting in there against Luigi van der Ime. I think he's coming off a loss in his last fight in the UFC. He's coming off a loss against Faris Ayam. So it'll be an interesting fight for Paddy. And I think Paddy said this himself. A lot of fighters come in, they've got lots of pressure on them, but Paddy's probably fought under more pressure than he will in his debut in terms of like selling out the Echo Arena and that home crowd there and all that. So he's kind of coming in used to that level of pressure, right?
I think so, man. He's also a kid that's been doing MMA since he was about 13. Do you know what I mean? So everybody kind of knew about him as an amateur. He was doing as an amateur kid. He was beating grown men, subbing grown men and stuff like that, and landing submissions that not a lot of people can. So he's been in the game so long. It doesn't seem like the type that pressure gets to. If it does, he certainly doesn't show it. He looks in phenomenal shape. Like he looks like he's got his strength conditioning and his diet and stuff sorted, which I think had been issues from before. He looks like a proper professional fighter now. I know he'd been doing a lot of extra boxing and stuff like that, but yeah, I don't think he'll feel pressure at all. And I think the UFC's not matched him softly. They've given him a test. This guy's got a tall striker. I had a quick look at him because we were going to send some guys down to spar with Paddy for this poll. His coach had messages asking about anybody, so I had a quick look. I think the kid's also a black belt in jiu-jitsu, so he's going to carry a threat with him in different places. But I think when you get in there with Paddy, it's a whole different game for what you're getting with other people. He's not doing stuff by the book. He's quite creative, unorthodox and stuff. And if you can't deal with that on the fly in 15 minutes, you're going to struggle with some of his shit. So I think he'll have a good show on Saturday and maybe get the submission finished. I wouldn't be surprised if pounds the guy out for top position either. But
yeah, and kind of leads us on to another massive prospect in the UK. Totally different to Paddy in terms of personality and that sort of stuff. But then it comes to Jack Shore, who's 14-0, and I mean, Jack Shore looks like he's got the world at his feet at the moment. So he's obviously on the card as well. He's fighting Ludwig Sholanian. I've messed up that name, but he's a Ukrainian lad I think he's debuting. He's debuting in the UFC, right? fought in LFA before this and Bellator. I mean, that's a stiff test to come into the UFC against, isn't it? Jack showed at bantamweight is looks like a guy who's going to be up there challenging for that title at some point.
I think that was a short note. I think Jack's actually cycled through a couple of different opponents, and this is the latest one. But you don't get really bad fighters for Ukraine. You know what I mean? So he's been in big promotions, but again, Jack's looked excellent in the UFC, and he's still. I don't think it doesn't look like he's been out of first gear yet. He still looks like he's got gears to go through. I'm kind of following bits and pieces on social media, and his kid looks like he just works all the time. And him and his dad seem to have a right plan about where they want to go and the direction they're taking his career. So I think it'll be another good test for him, man. I'll give him some different stuff that he's not dealt with before. And I think his first fight on as well. I think his very first fight on the fight past prelims even. I'm not sure that run was right.
I may be wrong, but I've got him as his second last fight in the prelims up before. I could be completely wrong as well. I guess we'll see. But in terms of changing opponents, that's something Jack's going to be used to. It's happened to him throughout his amateur and professional career. So I think that's something Jack and the team are used to.
We spoke about here, mind, when we had his dad on about one of the benefits of that IMAF tournament. You don't know who you're fighting. You turn up, there's 16 guys in your division. You've got to fight your way to the top every 3 days. So it's like that's one of the benefits of that style of tournament, where you've not got 8 weeks to prep for one guy. You've got to be well rounded enough to deal with whoever's in your bracket. And I think that's definitely something that's held him in good stead. He had a lot of prelates at Cage Warriors, remember, as well. Yeah. So it's just part and parcel of the game.
Yeah, and we'll kind of move to the Molly McCann fight now. Obviously, Molly teammate Paddy Pimblett. Molly's coming into this in a bit of a tough spot. She's coming off. She had a good run there of wins, but then she's coming off now off the back of a couple of losses, and it's always a pressure spot to be in when you're with the UFC if you've had a couple of losses. I think Molly may get by. She'll be obviously looking to win this fight, but again, like Paddy, she's got that personality. She's marketable. But for any fighter, that's a difficult spot to be in the UFC, isn't it?
There's a lot of pressure there with that. We've had that before with some of the guys. It's one of the aspects of dealing with the UFC that I don't really like, to be honest, because it can mean you go into that fight not even trying to win, but just trying not to get beat. And it can. It's the same as the show money and the win money. It can have a negative effect on stuff as well. But I think she's a good enough fighter to get there and get a win on Saturday. She's a good fighter. She's never really in a bad fight. She just needs to go and impose her game, I think, and be first. It's always, whenever I watch her fight, it's always like if she starts putting her game on the other girl first, she always tends to do well. As some of these other girls get a step ahead of it can be quite hard for her to get back. But hopefully she's a nice person, Hartman, just like, and a good kind of personality to have about. I think she's brilliant for women's MMA in general. Yep. She's quite refreshing compared to some of the other girls. It's all just like fucking OnlyFans and beach pictures and whatever else. Like she's just like a proper fighter. So hopefully she gets the job done at the weekend.
And just, we talk about tough spots as well. We've got Bukauskas in there as well, or Bukauskas rather, former Cage Warriors champion. He's coming into UFC. He's now won his first fight and he's coming off the back of 2 losses. Again, it's that tough position, and he's going in there against Khalil Roundtree, a guy who we've seen fought in the UFC for quite a long time. Some of his fights he's looked, I'm trying to remember what fight it was, Eric Anders' fight, it looked phenomenal.
Yeah.
So it's an extremely difficult fight, and again, it's one you get into with that pressure.
He's had hard matches since they chucked him in. For what I hear of people he actually picked, I think he got a list of opponents for his last fight. He picked, was it Jimmy Crute he got?
Jimmy Crute.
He actually picked him to that list, which shows the level of confidence he's got, because he's dangerous, man. it's a good fight, this, with two good strikers. You know what you're getting with Roundtree. Like, he's just a big puncher. He's got that Thai style that he's went away and came back with now. But Modestas has dealt with that before. I think the thing with that Keel Roundtree is he's so inconsistent. Sometimes he looks like a world beater, like you said, and then other times he looks like a ranked novice. So, but for Modestas, hopefully the ranked novice Roundtree turns up, or he seems to get in his way a wee bit and overthink stuff sometimes, Roundtree. So hopefully that version turns up and Modestas turns up on form. But he's needing a win, I think, man. There, it could be in trouble. It could be back at Cage Warriors soon, but it's a challenge for him. And Roundtree's name still carries a wee bit of weight. So if he can beat him, it might, to an extent, erase the last two losses, and he can just take it from there.
Yeah, absolutely. And you were smart there. You used his first name. I was stupid and didn't. His pals will Luke Shanks, their ex-teammate. So Luke speaks to him now and again, and he'll be like, he'll tell me Modestas is fighting this guy before he'll say. So I'm no good with names either, man. I'll go with the first name from future if I can't get the second names. And then obviously moving up to will be the co-main event. We've got Tom Aspinall against Sergey Spivak. So obviously Tom is coming off that last fight, his win against Arlovsky. We actually he subbed Arlovsky, didn't he? That's right.
Aye, he looked great in that fight.
I know, and it's you know what it's like with the heavyweight division. It's just the opportunity. It's not like a lot of the other divisions where it can take you a long time to get up into that title contention. Know that I'm saying Tom's pushing for that straight away, but the opportunities do come faster in that division than more so than a lot of divisions. But Tom has looked great since getting into the promotion. We don't have many heavyweight prospects in the UK, or we haven't had in a long time. And Tom seems to be one of the brightest ones that's coming out of the UK. Or the brightest, rather.
Yeah, he's one of the brightest prospects at heavyweight, full stop. And mostly just because of his age. We've talked about this before, but heavyweight's all dinosaurs. It's all guys late 30s and 40s. Which you go with Arlovsky and stuff there. Tom's not even 30 years old yet, which is unique at heavyweight. He's looked absolutely. He's 3-0 in the UFC now. I think his last fight pre-UFC I was at Cage Warriors, and the French guy that he knocked out there's now in the UFC as well. So he's Ben Hamoda. He's dispatched French guy. He's dispatching that level of competition. His first fight in the UFC was one of the best kind of stoppages of the year. He's just done Arlovsky. I think this is like another good test for him in the right direction. Like it's not like a massive jump. And he spoke about that when he was on this podcast, where how he's in no rush. If it takes him 3 or 4 years to get to, and you can see that, like it's a well thought out plan. But he's got so much potential. I think I wouldn't be surprised if he's the next kind of English world champion. To be fair, maybe not in the next year or two, but it looks like at some point he will. If he keeps improving at the rate he is, and you wouldn't think twice about him maybe beating Cyril Gain and that just now. He's got the tools there. He's better than him on the ground. He could handle that striking with the boxing that he's got and stuff. So I think he gets another win at the weekend, and then it'll be a top 10, maybe top 15, top 10 guy he needs next.
Yeah, the thing is as well, but when obviously Tom's saying he's no rush, he doesn't mind waiting 3-4 years. If he fights the way he's fighting, and if you look through his since becoming a professional, I mean, he's actually not had a lot of cage time as a professional. When you look at the Arlovsky one, at least gave him what I think it was 6 minutes and 9 seconds in the cage, which was probably more than nearly all his last fights. But if he keeps finishing guys and performing the way he is, he just may not have a choice, but the UFC will offer him the big names, which just immediately propels him up.
Especially if the rest of the guys keep win one, lose one, win one, lose one, and he's on a 3, possibly going into waking up on Sunday morning a 4-fight winning streak in the UFC. So it'll only be a matter of time. But you've seen it when he was on this podcast, man. He's got an old head on young shoulders, that guy. He's aware of what's happening. He's preparing for what's happening. And I think when the time comes for him, he'll definitely, the team Kilburn will definitely have him ready for it.
Because you think of win here and then you start looking up through the division at guys like your Volkovs and stuff like that, just to throw a name in there. You would imagine a win here, it's got to really be top 10. Who else is outside the top 10?
I think with this one, it'll be a top 10 guy next. Possibly after that, a top 5 guy. And if he beats a top 5, that potentially puts him in title contention. The division's obviously up in the air a wee bit now. You've got an interim champion with Gann. They'll have to make that fight with Gann. You're waiting on John Jones coming up. So, do you know what I mean? You want him to get that top 10 guy first, just to put himself in the mix with the guys, and then see what happens there. But when Jones comes up to that division, it's going to make that division one of the most watched divisions in the sport again. Because for a while it's been terrible. It's been tepid. So, like, he's putting himself in a good spot where there's going to be eyes on him. You want to see him fight guys like Derek Lewis and stuff like that, just to see those fights. I'll not be far off those fights, so I don't think.
Some good fights up there from. And then obviously we've got we'll talk Tom Aspinall out of Team Cowboy, and then we've got probably the most famous member of the Team Cowboy, and we've got the ever-present on Instagram, Darren Till. I quite like him and Michael Bing's back and forth. They're quite amusing. So Darren Till, Derek Brunson. First off, give me your thoughts on the fight. How do you see this one playing out?
I can see a bunch of different scenarios. It's a weird fight, man. Till's 1-3 in his last 4. Yep. Brunson's won his last 4. It could potentially be a terrible night for Darren Till. Or what I think might happen is he'll fight smart like he did against Kelvin Gastelum, and just be too skillful and too tricky, and just outpoint Brunson in the 5 rounds. I think technically Till's a far superior striker to him. Yeah. I don't know if Brunson will even try and wrestle with him. He seems to have fallen in love with his power a wee bit. He's definitely a bit more reckless. He looks like Brunson hits harder than Till, I think. It's whether Darren Till decides to come out and have a proper fight, or he shows that kind of maturity he showed in the Gastelum fight and just comes out and he got applauded for that, like fighting the way he did against Gastelum off people, like how his IQ was better and he paced the fight better and stuff like that. So he's in a funny position, Darren Till, because if he loses that, at one time we were all thought he was coming up to middleweight, he was going to go on a run and become the middleweight champion, and now it looks like he's miles away from it. He's now in a position where he's probably more famous for being a personality than what he actually does in the cage, which is weird. But the Brunson fight could potentially kill his career. And we talked about that pressure being on Paddy Pimblett earlier. There's pressure on Darren Till, and I'll hopefully he uses it well, and he goes out and he just puts a striking clinic on Brunson.
Do we have to factor in, right? Obviously, Darren Till is he's 1-4. 1-3 in his last 4 fights. We could get let's do it. If we just look at it for the middleweight division, and you then say he's 1-2. But the 1-2 is against Kelvin Gastelum and Robert Whittaker. If we take that 1-2 and then sort of look at Derek Brunson is in a 4-fight win streak, but if you then compare the competition from who Derek Brunson's fighting versus who Darren's fought, do you have to almost factor that in as well? Because obviously the level of guys Till's fighting, and it's not to say that the level of guys, because obviously he's beaten like say Sebastian Holland and then Theodore and Heinrich. Does that factor into things as well?
I think it has to, man. I think Whittaker is the one there. There's a common opponent in Whittaker. Whittaker smoked Brunson, from what I remember. Whereas Till done not too bad against him. and Whittaker's probably the best middleweight in the world outside Adesanya by a good bit, the former champion and stuff. Shabazian, I think, is a massive win for Brunson, but I don't know if at this point in his career, if Till's a bigger threat than Shabazian is, to be honest. I think Shabazian's that super dangerous for one round and then faded big. But I think there's also that Till's best work was done doing it welterweight. He was no stop to anybody in a long time. And then I think Brunson might have even fought up at light heavyweight and came down. So I think he's getting a guy who's probably bigger and more athletic than him, which when Till's at his best, he's a bigger guy. He uses the southpaw advantage really well and stuff like that. And he's not going to have that advantage here with Brunson so much. But the level of competition, with the fact that Till was fighting their guys and main event and stuff like that, showed where the UFC thought he was going to go, even to headline in Liverpool against Wonderboy. They obviously thought, this is our next UK guy, this is our next Bisping or whatever potential title challenger. We'll build shows around about him. And it's not kind of materialised because he got done off with Tyrone Woodley, and you've seen what Woodley never won a fight after Till. I think he lost four in the trot after it. He'd get done off Masvidal, who's fought down a lightweight. And these are good fighters, obviously. But it just seems like that initial potential and promise hasn't materialised. But I think he wipes all of that out. Like, if he can put together a wee run and fight smart, and even get back to finishing some of these guys, then you forget about those losses. The Whittaker one is a different thing, because that could have been a world title fight if it wasn't for Adesanya being about. Whittaker's an exceptionally good fighter. But it'll give us an idea of where this fight of the weekend will give an idea of where Darren Till's going, and how his career's pretty much going to pan out, I think.
And it's about Darren Till getting back in the cage as well, because that's one thing. Obviously COVID and everything, a lot of fighters have been inactive out with the guys out in America and stuff like that. They've had a lot of fights, but it will be an interesting one, and obviously we'll be rooting for Darren Till, and that one hopefully comes away with a win, as we will be all the UK fighters. Shape up to be a really good card, and I think obviously if it's on at a good time for us, we don't need to stay up to stupid o'clock. We're all getting a bit older and it's getting a bit harder.
I've not watched. I think I've not watched the last couple of weeks. I've not watched Barboza yet, and I've been so busy with shows. I'm not staying up to 3 o'clock in the morning anymore. So I'm looking forward to this one. I always like the shows that you've got a bit. It's like an invested interest when the guys that you know are on it. So it should be good, man. Hopefully Jack Shore gets the job done, the four Scousers get the job done, and Modestas gets back to winning as well. And then it'll line up what's coming next better.
Yeah, absolutely. And it will, like I say, it'll be a good show for the UK fans. We've not had much in the way of MMA to cheer about out with Cage Warriors recently, so it'll be nice to actually get a UFC where it's not on at silly o'clock. So and that's this coming Saturday. That's on. I think that's us covered everything tonight, James.